Will nothing to win and nothing left to lose. You give yourself away, and you give yourself away, and you give, and you give, and you give yourself away, with or without you. With or without you, oh, I can't live. With or without you. We'll leave without you.
Ready? Shabbat Shalom, everyone! We're exploring the guitar sound of the Edge here on this Shabbat. And it was a wonderful sound. It is a wonderful sound. This is a day of rejoicing, right, folks? Ready to rejoice? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good to have you. Wesley, ask everyone to make their way into the sanctuary. We're going to start Shabbat services together now. And welcome to everyone from everywhere around the world. It's good to spend this day with you. It's a little chilly down here in Macon. But we have Dennis and Rita from Michigan who are warming up the room. They brought all that northern air with them. Let's do a little Paul Wilbur, old school Paul Wilbur, what we call the famous Messianic Trilogy, Trinity maybe. It's it's an oldie but a goodie from Paul. Thank you, Paul, for a career invested in making great Messianic music. We're gonna bring it into Shalom Macon right here. Let God arise, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let God arise, let God arise, let God arise, let God arise. Let his enemies be scattered, and let the righteous be glad. Yes, let them rejoice with gladness. God is triumph mightily. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let God arise.
be glad. Yes, let them rejoice with gladness. God is triumph mightily. Let God arise. 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 It is good to praise the Lord and make music to your name, O God Most High, to proclaim your love and faithfulness all the day and through the night. La la la, la la la, la la, la la la, la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. May I dwell in your courts, O Lord, that are flourish like the trees of Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai, there to live forevermore. Ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. It is good to praise the Lord and make music to your name, O God Most High, to proclaim your love and faithfulness all the day and through the night. Ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Roni, Roni. Zion, Hariyu, Yisrael, Simchi Valtzi, B'chol lev, Bat Yerushalayim. Sing, O, daughter of Zion, shout aloud, Yisrael, rejoice and be glad with all your heart, O Jerusalem. For the Lord has taken your punishment, destroyed your enemies. King of Israel, Lord of all is He, in the midst of us He is mighty. Roni, Roni, Bat Zion, Hariyu, Yisrael, Simchi Valtzi, B'chol lev, Bat Yerushalayim. For the Lord your God in the midst of you, mighty is His name. Rejoicing over you with songs of gladness, singing joyfully, He will save us. Roni, Roni, Bat Zion, Hariyu, Yisrael, Simchi Valtzi, B'chol lev, Bat Yerushalayim. Sing, O, daughter of Zion, shout aloud, Yisrael, rejoice and be glad with all your heart. Oh, Jerusalem, oh, Jerusalem, oh, Yerushalayim.
Takes a little bit of breath to do Paul Wilbur's trilogy there. So that was about as Messianic music-y as it gets. We're going to back up and go a different direction now.
a glimpse of your splendor in the corner of my eye. Most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was like a flash of lightning reflected off the sky. And I know I'll never be the same. Show me your glory. Send down your presence. I want to see your face. Show me your glory. Majesty shines about you. I can't go on without you, Lord. When I climb down the mountain to get back to my life, I won't settle for ordinary things. I'm gonna follow you forever for all of my days. I won't rest till I see you again. Show me your glory. Send down your presence. I want to see your face. Show me your glory. Majesty shines about you. I can't go on without you, Lord. Shines about you. I can't go on without you, Lord. Show me your glory. Send down your presence. I want to see your face. Show me your glory. Majesty shines about you. I can't go on without you, Lord. Do you're a child of God. Do you know that you're a word from heaven? Do you know that you're a child of God? Do you know Do you really know every word sent down from heaven will not go back up till it's succeeded in what it's sent to do? Every word sent down from heaven will not go back up till it's succeeded in what it's sent to do. Do you know that you're a word from heaven? Do you know that you're a child of God? The sons and daughters of the living God. The sons and daughters of the living God. The sons and daughters of the living God. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sons and daughters of the living God. The sons and daughters of the living God. 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 The sons and daughters of the living God. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sons and daughters of the living God. The sons and daughters of the living God. The sons and daughters of the living God. Yeah. Every word sent down from heaven will not go back up till it's succeeded what it sent it to do. Every word sent down from heaven will not go back up till it succeeded what it sent it to do. Do you know that you're a word from heaven? Do you know that you're a child of God? Lord, it was you who created the heaven. Lord, it was your hand stars in their place. Lord, it is your voice that commands the morning, even oceans and their waves, they bow at your feet, oh Lord. Lord, who am I compared to your glory? Lord, who am I compared to your majesty? I am your beloved, your creation, and you love me as I am. You have called me chosen for your kingdom, unashamed to call me your. I am your beloved. I am your beloved. Lord, it was you who created the heavens. Lord, it was your hand that put the stars in their place. Lord, it is your voice that commands the morning, even oceans and their waves, they bow at your feet, oh Lord. Lord, who am I compared to your glory? Oh Lord. Lord, who am I compared to your majesty? I am your beloved, your creation, and you love me as I am. You have called me chosen for your kingdom, unashamed to call me your. I am your beloved, your creation, and you love me as I am. You have called me chosen for your kingdom, unashamed to call me your. I am your beloved. I am your beloved. I am your beloved. Let's stand, friends. Ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la. Ya la la, ya la la la. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam va'ed. Leolam, 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 Leolam va'ed. Ya la la, ya la la la. You may be seated. Yeshua, He is my Messiah. He is Lord of all. Yeshua, He is my Messiah. He is Lord of all. He is Lord of all. He is Lord of all. Yeah. Let's stand. Wherever you are in the world, stand up with us for the standing prayer. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Oh, open my lips. Open my lips. Open my lips. Open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Declare your praise. Declare your praise. Declare your praise. Adonai, Sfatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. The God who is faithful through all the generations. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Chanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avod, מביא גואל לפני בניהם למען שמו באחווה. מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם. The God who is faithful to resurrect the dead. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה ורב להושיע. מושיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לה. מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. The Holy One seated above the heavens. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Mimkomcha Makeinu Tofia Timoch Aleinu Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach Ay 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 Matzai Tilo Betzion Bekarov Beyameinu Leolam Va'ed Tishkor Titkadar Vetikadash B'toch Yerushalayim Bircha B'torado Netzach Netzachim Ay 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 V'eineinu Tireina Malchusecha Kadamar Ha'amor B'shirei Uzecha Al Yadei David Mashiach Tzidkecha. To the God who gives us this day of rest and refreshing. Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh Hashanah. God restoring his presence to Zion. Baruch atah Adonai Hamachazir Shechinato Letzion. To the God whose name is good and who is worthy of all thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai Hatov Shimcha Ulchanei Leholod. To the God who grants us peace. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Chaim Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Yai la 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 Amen. Borchenu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad Yalalai Yalalai Bor Panecha Kivor Panecha Natata Lanu Yalalai Yalalai Adonai Eloheinu Torat Chaim Ve'ahavat Chesed Ustaka Uvracha ורחמים וחיים, יאללה ושלום, וטוב יהיה בניך לברכנו וברך את כל עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה, יאללה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
Following the instruction of our Messiah, a prayer for the kingdom.
אבינו שבשמיים, יתקדש שמך, תבוא מלכותך, יעשה רצונך כאשר בשמיים גם בארץ. אלמדנו למחר, תן לנו היום ומחלנו על חומותינו כאשר מחלנו גם אנחנו לחייבינו. אל תביאנו לידי ניסיון, אם תצילנו מן הרע, כי לך הממלכה והגבורה והתפארת לעולמי עולמים, אמן. For the sake of our Master Yeshua, in his merit and his virtue, may the sayings of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be favorable, be favorable, be favorable to you. Oh Lord, my rock, my redeemer. Oh Lord, my rock, my redeemer. Oh Lord, my rock, my redeemer. Oh Lord, my rock and my redeemer, Yeshua, who HaMashiach, who Adon HaKol. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, the King of the universe, who has given us the way of salvation in Messiah Yeshua. Amen. You may be seated. It is an opportunity, it's my first time back in 2025, to thank everyone who so generously supported the work of Shalom Macon last year, and especially through the end of year giving campaign. It was truly miraculous. Thank you. And guess what? Just like the Torah turns over and over, so does your giving. It's 2025, so this is your invitation to keep on supporting our work. We are blessed and thankful for what God is doing in our midst, and it is through His Spirit, through His people. So thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Yom Yisrael, Yom Yisrael, Yom Yisrael Chai. עם ישראל, עם ישראל, עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל, עם ישראל, עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל, עם ישראל, עם ישראל חי. עוד אבינו חי, עוד אבינו חי. עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו חי. עוד אבינו חי, עוד אבינו חי. עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו חי. שבת שלום, שבת שלום. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, good morning, and welcome back, Rabbi. It's so glad to see you back. Not that Darren and them did a bad job, but we, you know. Whatever, I hear you. No, we thank y'all all for who have stepped up during Rabbi's absence and kept us going, and what a wonderful treat it was to have y'all. So thank y'all so much for being here on this cold day. I wore my oranges because I'm ready for summer to come back, guys. I don't like the cold. But anyway, let's just continue to keep the guys that have been affected by this weather in your prayers, and especially those in California who are suffering great devastation there. So we would like to welcome Esther. I practiced this, I swear I did. Esther from Italy. I'm not going to butcher your name. Giuliano Calati from Washington, D.C. Georgia H. from Ohio. Janice Rogue from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who said that the Rogers families made it there safely during all that the traveling for that they had to do, and Ellen LaRoche from Rapid City, South Dakota, and Jason Webley from Jamaica. And we also have people joining us today from Japan, Switzerland, Singapore, France, and London, and all over the United States, Idaho, Missouri, Tennessee, Texas, New York, Indiana, North Dakota, and all points in between. Thank y'all so much for joining us and participating with us. Today at 1:30, we will have Torah Club and Kids Hebrew at 1:30. And a note for next week, both of those will be canceled for next week, so get all you can in this week, guys. Teens to Life, well, Nick has a very bad migraine today, so pray for him. So Teens to Life will be canceled today. Coming up on the 18th, Torah on Tap. Guys, please come join us. We are in chapter 20. 22. We moved out of 21 finally. All right, so we'll be in chapter 20. It's on the Shalom at home page, so guys, look up there. And then on the 19th at 9 a.m. will be a kitchen training session. If you are interested in helping in the kitchen in any capacity, please let Karen know and show up next Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Okay, all right, well, I'll hush up about it. So, but anyway. Okay, well, Rabbi's going to cover all that, so y'all are in trouble. So, no. Well, and then with the end of that, Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, first of all, I forgot to announce this a long time ago, but we are nearing the end of our construction project, thank God. And it is going wonderfully well, and it will be done long before January 31st. Okay, long before. Why is that significant? Because on January 31st, Friday night, actually on January 31st, Kelly Eisner was born. So that's really important. No. But this January 31st, Friday night, we are going to kick off what we'll call a celebration dedication weekend of the new space, the new facilities, the new blessings that God has given this community. So it will begin Friday night with a nice Shabbat dinner. Saturday morning will be a regular Shabbat service, but we will take some time after services to dedicate this building. It's already dedicated, but you know, Hanukkah, We're going to have, we missed that by a month, but we're going to have our own little Hanukkah. We're going to have our own little dedication, and we'll have a very nice oneg that day. So I want to invite everyone, not just the people who are in these seats. By the way, if you've not been in these seats, talking to you, yes, on the couch, you who normally is here, I'm talking to you. Now, if you haven't been coming either because you're tired of construction or you're tired of Romans, both of those will be over by January 31st. So I want everyone who is anywhere close to Shalom Macon to be here that weekend. Okay? But I also want to make sure that everyone who's not close, who has been thinking about planning a trip, come and celebrate that weekend with us. It's going to be special. It's a sort of a culmination of giving and sacrifice and a lot of things that have gone into this. So we want to celebrate it with as wide of the Shalom Macon community as possible. So even if you're far away and you're planning, come on, January 31st, February 1st. Now, everyone's seen the movie Field of Dreams, right? If you build it, right, I'm going to modify that. This is called the Field of Kitchens. If you build it, they will volunteer. Karen has been up here for several weeks talking about the volunteer teams, what's needed for the kitchen. The reason, just by quick review, why we built that was so that we could serve our community locally, serve guests who come to our community, and serve the broader community through Passover Seders, larger events, being able to do all these things without having to pay tens of thousands of dollars to cater things. So we're going to do that. We've got a Passover Seder that's going to be scheduled, which haven't done that in probably over a decade. So we're excited about that coming up. But the point is, we can't do any of those things if we do not staff the kitchen. Meaning, we're not going to pay someone to come in and work in the kitchen. We're the ones. We're the stewards. We're the volunteers. We're the people that we built it for so that we could benefit. But you don't come and just sit at a table and let everyone else do all the work and serve you. You're either preparing food, you're either cleaning up the kitchen, you're serving food, you're doing something. And there's an opportunity for everyone to do that. And you need to do that. I'm not even asking you, I'm telling you. If you're a part of the community, you need to do that. It's just what you do. Read Acts, okay? They sold all their stuff. I'm not even asking you to do that. I'm asking you to wash a pot. Okay, so the point is about Karen's cooking training. If you go to this website, shalommacon.org/volunteer, you're going to find all of the teams there that need help. That starts January 31st because we've got a big event. That Friday night, that Saturday morning, we've got a big oneg that's planned. So go to that website, shalommacon.org/volunteer, review the team needs, and figure out where you can serve. I think they're dated for the upcoming event, so you can pick a date. You can know exactly. Prep, serving, tear down, setup, cleanup. It's very easy. And it's not something that you need to volunteer to do every week. You can probably do this a few times a year, and we can meet the need, okay? So that's my remand. That's a request and a demand, but it just sounds, it's not a demand. I'm not demanding. If you can't do it, you can't do it. I get it. But I think you can, and I think you should. So that's me being a little strong as the leader of the community, because you need a strong leader, right? No. Let's serve. That's what we need to do. So Karen's kitchen training will be this Sunday. What time? That's tomorrow. Or next week? Okay, next Sunday the 19th, because this is coming on short notice if you were going to volunteer. But she is going to do a training tomorrow at what time? To be determined. And then the following Sunday she can be in touch with you on that. So thank you for listening to my long rant. Now, Kids, let's go to Shabbat school. This is a particularly relevant blessing for these young people. Who knows who gets a blessing in this week's Torah portion? A man that is very famous. His name is Yaakov. What does that mean? Jacob, Israel, Jacob, right? He meets his son he sees his son that he hadn't seen for a long time, who is Yosef, which means Joseph. Very good. And Joseph had two sons. Who remembers their names? Ephraim and Manasseh. And so they get a blessing this week in the Torah portion. And Jacob does it in a unique way, doesn't it? Like this, or right? All right, gents, young men. Yisimcha Elohim ke Ephraim v'chi Manasseh. May the Lord make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And I'll tell you what that means, as Jacob went on to say. He said, may you proliferate like fishes. That's what he says. At the appropriate time, of course. That's, way down the road. Young ladies, we have these wonderful, heroic women in Judaism: Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Yisameach Elohim Kesarah, Rivka, Rachel, Valeah. May the Lord make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Bless our children, Father. We thank you for this and this opportunity. Ask for their health, their protection, their favor, and to be strong and representative of you, of Messiah, and of the kingdom. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'yihuneka yisar Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Okay, you can go to Shalom Kids. Happy New Year, by the way. Happy New Year. I usually do a big message on the best version of you to kick off every year. Darren took care of that for us last week. Thank you, Darren, for all of your service while I was out. And since I was out, though, for the first Shabbat of 2025, I thought I would come in and kind of do that this week with the best version of you, with the launch of a new series that's called Repaving the Romans Road. Just kidding. We are still in Romans. And we're going to see it through to the end. Could we ever quit now? Mega Noito! By the way, I was at Sadi Advance, and Elena from Shalom Broken Arrow in Oklahoma, one of the young women who was attending the event, came up and showed me this, handed it to me, gave it to me, said that at Shalom Broken Arrow, they had some of these made, and they are all referencing them. The top 10 meganoitos from Romans, so that you should always know what you want God to forbid, right? Meganoito. So thank you, Elena and Broken Arrow. Wonderful. That's going in my office. I've got good news. I've got great news. I've got better news. Good, great, better. We're coming to the end of the book of Romans, and I really wanted to compress. That sounds like I don't like Romans. I do. I just know it's been a lot. I wanted to take chapters 12 and 16 and compress them all into one, because generally Paul is saying kind of the same thing in these chapters. But there are a few little points that need emphasis. So my plan, just so you're aware of where we're headed, This week, we're going to hit a couple of chapters. Next week, we'll hit the 14, 15, 16, and probably have a conclusion. I may have to stretch it one more, but the point is, we are nearly through one of the most difficult books in the entire Bible to read and understand, all right? More good news. The material from here on out is not extremely complicated. It is not theologically dense. You very much need to know what it is, but it will not twist your brain up like many of the other things that we've talked about. And because it is not extremely complicated, it is not that long to present it. So we will not have one of those long messages on Romans, okay? So here comes a shocker, though. There are still some points of disagreement within these chapters of Romans from the traditional perspective and what I want to point out to you. Therefore, let's jump in to the updated version of the Romans Road that we're building. I just realized I don't have a Bible that has Romans in it up here. We can just put it on the screen. I'll use the NRSV UE, okay? Therefore, now, I use that word on purpose. Say this word with me. Un. Someone thinks they're being tricked because a lot fewer people said it the second time. They think I'm about to tell you some kind of joke. That means therefore in Greek. Un, okay? This is an important word in Greek and English and probably all languages. The word therefore serves as a transition word. It shows that what's following is a direct consequence or a conclusion of what's already been said. It's a way of saying, because of everything I just said, this. Because of this, therefore, this. It connects logical arguments. It builds a foundation on something that has been laid. So, I've spent a lot of time throughout the series pointing out that Paul is speaking to a specific situation, okay? Not necessarily providing a theological treatise for all mankind, though his points are applicable to all disciples, but that he's specifically speaking to this critical exigency, this urgent and pressing situation that must be addressed. So this, therefore, that starts chapter 12. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present yourselves, your bodies, as a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. That, therefore, is really, really important. It signals that the ethical instructions of chapter 12 and 16 are grounded in the theological arguments that preceded it. 1 through 11, built into 12 and 16, but particularly 9 through 11, built into 12 to 16. So he opens 12 by saying, all that I just told you, therefore, I'm going to tell you this. They're connected. It is not a major gear shift, okay? It's not Paul going in a totally different direction. It's not that he lost his way, that he had this dogmatic doctrinal thesis going in 1 through 8. Then he got to 9 through 11, got confused, thought about the Jews. Now he's coming back to 12 and he's going to talk about, being a good person. It's not that. It's grounded in these theological arguments. It's not a new topic. It's a practical outworking. As the Jewish annotated New Testament comments regarding the usage of therefore, in view of what Paul has just argued about the role of Gentiles in God's plan, including how their interests are related to how God is working with the Israelites, he offers in chapters 12 through 15 the following exhortation for how these Gentiles ought to behave. It is not a blast of theology through 8 chapters, 3 chapters of diversion on Jews and 12 on being good. It's good behavior driven by proper theology regarding the God of Israel and being a member of the family. So here's the process. The flow of thought for Paul's letter in short form. Gentiles, You are invited. You are included. You are embraced by the God of Israel. You are massively important just as you are. No need to become Jewish. No conversion required. You should be proud of your role, but don't be arrogant. Right? Spend a lot of time. Don't think you've replaced anyone, especially the natural branch. And he connects that point from chapter 11. Don't become arrogant, he says in verse 20. To chapter 12, verse 3, I say to everyone among you not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but with sober judgment. To 12:16, live in harmony with one another. Don't be arrogant. Do you think he's really trying to get the message that you shouldn't be arrogant? He's really trying to get that through. Now, live in harmony with one another. Do not be arrogant, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. How is that done? How to live in harmony? Paul answers, and it's very important. That's how he closes this book out on Jews and Gentiles living in community. This is how you live in harmony. It's a favorite idea in songs and messages. It's sort of an unpopular thing that we're supposed to do and don't do it, and it is 2 words, a living sacrifice. That's what you're supposed to do, he says. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, on the basis of God's mercy, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, which is your reasonable act of worship. Don't be conformed to this age. Be transformed by the renewing of the mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God and what is good and acceptable and perfect. A living sacrifice. It sounds, so spiritual and theological and, we should ponder this. And it is those things in some ways. But Paul then proceeds very simply to show you what it looks like practically speaking. It's not that complicated. It's not easy, but it's not complicated. Summarized in one of my favorite Bible verses ever, from Romans 12, if it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. 12:18. You want to be a living sacrifice? As much as it depends on you, live at peace with all, especially starting in your own home. My friends, it is a transformative way to live, a transformed, renewed mind living sacrifice. But that sort of seems like a contradiction, doesn't it? Living sacrifice? I mean, a sacrifice is, a sacrifice, something that dies. A living sacrifice. How does one live through that? Well, we know that Paul has already covered the death motif in chapter 6. He told his audience, guess what? You died. You died. What are we to say? Should we continue in sin in order that grace may increase? This is chapter 6. By no means. How can we who died to sin go on living in it? Do you not know that all of us who were baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? Therefore, we were buried with him by baptism into death, so that just as Messiah was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, so we also might walk in newness of life. In other words, you died and you came back to life, sort of, in Messiah. You're really going to do it later, but even now on earth. Death, life, living sacrifice. Now, the expansion of that for Paul, which sounds incredibly similar to Yeshua's message in so many places, is this. Just as a sacrifice in the temple brings connection or reconnection or intimacy, restored intimacy to the one who brings it, so too Paul instructs his hearers by being this living sacrifice. Your new life gained through death is going to bring you into the opportunity to serve others, to make connections, to have not intimate is a word, but I don't mean it that way. To have spiritual intimacy. You're going to do that. That's a living sacrifice, and he tells us what it looks like. We can read chapter 12, just a little bit after, just the instructions that he gives us. If you go back up to like 12:6 or so. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given us: prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry, teaching, all of these things, exhortation, giving. These things we're going to do compassionately, we'll do in cheerfulness. And let love be genuine. Hate what's evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. All of these things, this is his instruction. This is what it looks like to be a living sacrifice. So if you were curious about it, all you have to do is read what he says. I told you, it's hard, but it's not complicated. Okay? Die to your earthly desires. Now, who thinks that? Who thinks that's a sacrifice? Who does that every day without any difficulty at all? No one. It's hard, but it's not complicated. This, Paul says, is your reasonable act of worship. Your mind will be transformed into a new way of thinking and therefore a new way of acting in a new, enlivened way. A living sacrifice. He says this is your worship. The word is latria in Greek. You know what that word connects to in Hebrew? Avodah. Avodah means service. It's the temple service. It's the Passover service. It is a worship. Acts of service, but dedication and worship. So Paul's saying that's what it's going to look like for you. It's got this little temple connection, which is kind of cool. But putting it plainly, we died to live that we might serve others. That's the message, really, of the last 4 chapters of the book of Romans. Well, 12 through 15. 16 is its own thing. It's not a new direction. He meant to make this point from the beginning. And here's the thing about these gifts. They are notably corporate in their exercise, not merely individual. Together, when we exercise them, this is going to be what it looks like to have a living sacrifice as you being one. And that, my friends, goes quite far beyond the road to individual salvation, which is what the Romans road is supposed to be all about. This is what it's all about, actually. Now, Paul makes clear a huge component of this is to not think more highly of oneself than you ought to. Don't be super-minded. Be sober-minded. Okay? And we've learned for Paul that includes especially the Gentile acceptance of their dependence on the God of Israel, the Messiah of Israel, and the proper treatment of the Jewish people. Even those Jewish people who are not convinced that Jesus is the Messiah. Paul makes it clear. Do not be arrogant to the natural branch. He does not distinguish that the natural branch is only Jewish Jesus followers. Do not be arrogant, which brings us now into an interesting discussion in chapter 13. Let's read chapter 13. It's relatively short, but I want you to understand it and I want you to get it. So pull it up. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there's no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority resists what God has appointed. Those who resist will incur judgment. Rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Do you wish to have no fear of the authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive its approval. For it is God's servant for your good. But if you do what is wrong, you should be afraid, for the authority does not bear the sword in vain. It is the servant of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be subject not only because of wrath, but because of conscience. For the same reason you also pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants busy with this very thing. Pay to all what is due them, taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, honor to whom honor is due. We'll leave it at those 7 verses for now, because I have this question. Who's he talking about? Who is he telling them to obey? Rome. Rome. That is the traditional perspective. Rome. The Roman government. And when I say traditional, I mean by like almost everyone's assessment, he is telling them, pay taxes to Rome. Messianic, across many, many boundaries of interpretation, not just Christian pastors and theologians. And it makes sense, right? It really does. Unlike our Western perspective, in which if we feel threatened or challenged by a government, we will stand up and overthrow it. We did it once. It worked out pretty good for us. Back in the 18th century, we rocked that thing. But let me tell you something. In Rome, they will kill you quicker than you can smile. That didn't work in Rome. Civil disobedience was, not a thing. Rome would kill you, and quick, they didn't tolerate. So Paul says, basically, this is a perspective, be good. Do what they say. They're not good rulers are not bad to good conduct. They're only bad to those who break the rules. So guess what? Don't break the rules. Okay? And we could tie this back to Romans 8, actually, this idea here that Paul would be talking to them about Rome. Why? Romans 8 is where he's saying, guys, I know it's difficult. The Spirit is yearning within us. We want to get out of here. And we need intercession. Why? Because it was difficult to be a Gentile believer in Rome. When you got rid of the family gods and you got rid of the idolatry, Rome didn't like you. And your family probably didn't like you. So Paul was talking to them about being energized and encouraged by the Spirit. Just hang on. Times are tough, but it's going to be okay. Why? Because Paul's a firm believer that Yeshua is on the doorstep. That's the sense of his urgency. He says at the end of this chapter, besides this, you know what time it is, how it is already the moment for you to wake from sleep, for salvation is nearer to us now than when we became believers. The night is far gone. The day is near. Friends, he'll be back soon, so hang on. Okay? Makes sense. Put your head down. Deal with the Roman government. Don't make a stink. Now, don't serve any stinky idols, but don't make a stink with the Roman government. It's a logical argument. It's supported by Scripture. Daniel had a similar situation. Judaism very much recognizes that God's sovereignty in using flawed human institutions like Rome for divine purposes, that can happen. That's what he means, the traditional says, for the authorities are God's agents. God put them in place. Believers, Paul is saying, you got to prioritize harmony, avoid rebellion. Even consistent with Yeshua's teaching in Mark, right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. This is not complicated. So I'll just say this very well could be Paul's intention. That is to keep this community safe until Messiah returns. Maybe they're really struggling to understand how to live under the rule of these idolaters, these Roman overlords. And while Paul does not suggest total surrender to ungodly rulers, in this case, as I said, he says, hang on till Yeshua comes back. You can do it with the help of the Spirit. He's interceding. Chapter 8, that makes sense. All of that makes sense. So who said Rome? It's a good answer. But this is a repaving project. Would you honestly expect me to not give you some other angle to consider as we're repaving a potential potholes? And admittedly, this is a minority opinion, one that could be criticized by the masses for its aggressive interpretive tendency, and yet, given the audience, the content, the context, the critical exigency, everything Paul said up to now and his purpose in the letter, this actually makes an incredible amount of sense and merits at least having it in your interpretive frame for chapter 13. And I'll tell you what it is in just a second. But before I present it, I want to present at least one major difficulty in the traditional understanding of this being Rome. Paul is writing to who? Living in Rome. So they are Romans. He's writing the letter to the Romans living in Rome. And guess what? They know how things work in Rome. Does it make sense for Paul, who's never been to Rome? Yes, he's a Roman citizen. He had some knowledge, but he's never been to Rome. Does it make sense for him to suddenly, chapter 1 through 12, but now suddenly he switches into a lesson on civics and governmental obedience? It's sort of weird, but especially Romans knew the cost of disobedience to Rome. He didn't need to tell them this. It's a strange shift from chapter 12 to 13. But when we look at that shift from 12 to 13, and remember, there were no chapter and verse delineations here. The reader didn't say, okay, I want you to bless people, be a living sacrifice. Now, chapter 12 end, chapter 13, we're going to talk about the government now. Chapter 13, it didn't work like that. Chapter 12 and 13 flowed into one another, okay? And it's connected potentially to what comes before it. Maybe Paul isn't talking about obeying Rome, but someone else. Chapter 12 ends like this. Bless those who persecute you. Bless, do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be arrogant. Associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Don't repay anyone evil for evil. Take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it's possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. So, be humble. It's been a big part of the last 3 chapters. The Jews are still in the plan of God. He's not forsaken them. They're serving a purpose for the Gentile community to enter the family of God, even and especially maybe those unconvinced and unpersuaded Jews and Gentiles should not be haughty or super-minded toward them because God is at work, and given all of that material, those concepts and the flow and the purpose of the letter, here is a proposed reinterpretation of who he's talking to, presented primarily by Mark Nanos and other minority scholars. Paul isn't talking about the Roman government. He's talking about the synagogue authorities that were overseeing the communities within which these Gentiles functioned. Specifically, unconvinced synagogue authorities who may be making some aspects of life difficult for Gentiles entering into the community as disciples of Yeshua. Now listen, clearly stated, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the community of Gentile believers were living, learning, and worshiping within the synagogue with Jews. Who ran the synagogue? Jews. Thus, these Gentiles likely attended synagogue gatherings and were subject to Jewish community norms and leadership. It's not up for debate that this was a Jewish movement. It was later that the Gentiles created a non-Jewish, Gentile-led movement with popes and priests. But the synagogue authorities who are leading, ruling, if you will, if we can use that word, over communities where these Gentiles are integrated, it certainly makes some, if not a lot more sense, that Paul would call them God's agents, which he actually does in the text. Not Roman senators, emperors, and tax collectors. Thus, Gentile believers should respect the traditions and decisions of synagogue leaders, even if they're not Messianic. Because God isn't done with them yet, right? We just read chapters 9 through 11 and studied that extensively. The attitude of peace by the Gentiles in synagogues under their authority, that would foster peace and humility and continuity between Jewish and Gentile believers in the Roman Messianic community. Furthermore, Paul does not want Gentiles to be a stumbling block for unpersuaded Jews to follow Messiah. If they come in and they make a big stink against the leadership, they're going to be a stumbling block to Jews getting on board with Paul's mission. So he says, don't do that.
Furthermore, it is also a place of relative safety for these Gentile disciples because the synagogue is an approved cult by the Roman government perspective. They could be safely guarded in the synagogue. If they make a stink and are kicked out of the synagogue, they are in jeopardy, greater jeopardy. They needed this authority. They needed this place. So maybe it's self-protective beyond the spiritual and community component. It was practical advice for Gentiles. They would be protected then from Roman intrusion into their new faith identity. Now listen, I understand that's not a widely held view, but when we consider it, given all that we've learned, it has merit, for sure. Gentile pushback on non-Yeshua following Jewish leadership makes more sense than actually pushing back on the all-powerful Roman government, does it not? I think it does. The Gentile community was growing, probably relatively quickly. Paul has made this clear. First of all, Yeshua is the future, the way of salvation, the key to the kingdom. The Gentiles have received that message. They're positioned properly for his return. And Paul has made clear that many of his own Jewish brothers have not seen that. They are not persuaded about Yeshua. They have stumbled, though they have not fallen, which would raise for me, if I were a Gentile in this community, this would raise a logical issue for me. If all that, why would I listen to them? Why should I fall under the authority if they've missed the message that I so clearly have received? And as I've said all along in this series, why, if I'm that Gentile, would I not be arrogant toward them and think, I can do better, I have Jesus? Why would I consent to pay the 2 drachma temple tax to be sent to some Jewish place in Jerusalem where they're sacrificing animals? Why would I consent to that under them? Paul talks a lot about paying the tax, right? As we'll read, why would I, as a Gentile who's received the message of Messiah, just for recording purposes and in case anyone took this out of context, I'm not a Gentile, I'm actually Jewish. I'm doing something called speech and character. If I were a Gentile, why in the world would I submit to these instructions about food and holy days, etc., if they don't even have Jesus? And that's coming up in chapter 14. So these are good questions, right? But again, according to the interpretation, Paul suggests that it is their responsibility to submit to the authority of the community in which they participate. Now, the big objection to that comes from verse 4, where it says something about they hold the sword. Okay? What vision of a Roman centurion does not have him holding up this grand sword and shield and the big carpet helmet thing, sword? First of all, it's not that kind of sword. He's using the Greek word for a little dagger. Okay? But who else carries a sword? I mean, the traditional view says that represents the power of the Roman state to punish wrongdoers, capital punishment, all of that. But in Nanos' view, the sword is metaphorical for synagogue leaders' authority to enforce communal discipline and preserve order, particularly in the context of Torah observance and Jewish-Gentile relations. Paul himself had been disciplined by the synagogue and was disciplined by the authorities. I bet it didn't feel good. They may not have stabbed him with a sword, but they had the authority to inflict discipline on those who were wreaking havoc in the community. The synagogue would have had every right to remove Gentiles making claims or making difficulty that were unwilling to adopt the proper behavior of righteous Gentiles, that they were unwilling to demonstrate their fidelity to God, to the law, to the people. They had that authority. And so Nanos says this sword represents this disciplinary ability which they had. I don't carry a sword around here. I should. That would be fun. But I'd want one of the big ones where I could go. But if there's an issue, then I and the elders have the authority to deal with that. That's the way leadership structures work. Okay? So all that to say in conclusion, it's an interpretation very much worth considering. Paul never supposed that the Gentiles would start a new religion and a new authority structure, as I said, of popes and priests. He never, ever thought that would be the case. They would, as long as they needed to until Messiah came, they would function in the system of the synagogue that God had established. That's what Paul knew. Now I'm going to leave that point there, okay? That's it. There are many, if you really, really want to get into that, there's a book by Mark Nanos that's called The Mystery of Romans. It's a 1996 monograph where he spends 50 pages going into this proof with all the Greek and all of this other stuff. It's a great book to have on your shelf anyway, The Mystery of Romans. But I remember to remind you that when I was in San Diego for SBL, the Society for Biblical Literature, I had lunch with Mark Nanos and we were chatting a bit. And, you know, that book is almost 30 years old. And so the question was asked, do you still believe everything you wrote in The Mystery of Romans in 1996? He said, no, some things have changed, but not that. Because that is pretty good. And it's just so wonderfully flowing right down our Romans road. So in conclusion, it's this. Paul could be telling us that we need to obey the government in the cities in which we live. That's a Jewish idea. When you're in exile, you obey to a certain point. There are certain things you die for, but to generally speaking, you follow the civil authorities. That's a Jewish idea. And for the most part, we should do that, okay? So I'm not telling you that couldn't be what Paul's saying, but I am telling you this makes a lot of sense. What we have in Romans 12 through 15, though we've only covered 12 through 13, is called paranesis. In Greek, it's a biblical studies term. It's about moral and ethical exhortation, practical advice, guiding behavior based on these established principles and beliefs. Paul has spent all this time establishing these principles and beliefs for Gentiles, specifically in Rome. And he's asking them to be a living sacrifice, and as much as it depends on them, be at peace with all men. That includes potentially the synagogue leadership. That is their proper worship, their proper service, their proper avodah. And as Paul concludes his letter to the Romans, he is very clear in his purpose. We have to get along with each other even if we have points of disagreement. And when we see the letter from chapter 1 to 16 as a unit of communication, brilliantly constructed from a theological perspective, strategically worded to communicate the practical, ethical living between Jews and Gentiles, we're able to see the true beauty of Paul's genius. This is what it takes to get beyond tradition. And as he intended it, owe no one anything except to love one another, for the one who loves one another has fulfilled the law. This is the commandments: you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is fulfilling the law. Paul, like Yeshua, intends to demonstrate not the end of the law, but the filling full of it. The same usage, pluroo, that Yeshua uses when he says, I didn't come to abolish, but to fulfill. It's the same thing Paul's saying here in chapters 12 and 13. Fill it full. And how do you do it? You do it in love. That's actually what Romans is about. He's not quite finished making that point, so we will finish it for him next week. Shabbat Shalom. Let's stand together. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גלולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמר מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מי תחתנו. ונאמר, וחיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד. On that day, the Lord will be one, and his name will be one. And that's a government we can submit to. Although I must say, this is way off topic, and in closing, did anyone see Mark Zuckerberg's 5-minute Facebook announcement that he made? It's pretty miraculous, actually. Something good is afoot in our country. I'm praying that that's going to be the case. Basically, he you can watch it. I'm going to go into it at Shabbat services, but it's a real twisting of where he was to going back to like being American, which certainly has its benefits. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you his peace. B'Shem Yeshua, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'yihuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Enjoy a brisk day of cool air.